So I saw a video by the Chad who was talking about Gary Coleman's death and how people are suddenly acting like it's such a big deal when no one cared during his life. And I'll admit, for me, all Gary Coleman was a midget with a funny catchphrase. But he was also kind of an icon, and it was and so there's something about his presence that still kind of livened up my life a little bit, even if I didn't know a lot about him, or didn't really pay much attention to his life. Um, so but I think what we're getting at is when someone dies, there's a certain kind of heaviness to the air. You feel like you gotta say something. Um, and it's I guess it's in proportion to uh, the to how important that person was, or how close they were to you, how sort of timely the death was. Um, the first real death that I can remember in my life was my great grandmother, and she was 101. She was 101 when she died. Um, so not a whole lot of tragedy in that. It was more like just impressed with how with her longevity and how she managed to achieve that. I kind of had to almost try to force the tears on that one. I was like, I wanted to be sad, but I couldn't. It was just like, wow. I was just sort of glad to have gotten to know her. I mean, I was 14 at the time, so. Um, and then last year, about a year ago, I went to the funeral for my great aunt, who was like 88 or something. So, um, but yeah, I think one of my favorite classes when I was in college was a class called The Psychology of Death and Dying. Um, and some of the stuff we talked about was stuff that Professor Anton talks about a lot when he talks about Ernest Becker and the denial of death. Um, because I think that even that you don't have to be religious or spiritual and believe in some sort of afterlife in order to have that kind of impulse for immortality. Um, I think the very least is we all want to leave some sort of legacy behind and be remembered, and then and in that way somehow we live on. Um, and that's kind of evident in our burial practices. When we see a tombstone, it says, "Here lies so and so, born, born such a year, died such a year," and some words of remembrance. Um, that's the way that uh, we allow the dead to live on in us by our memory of them. They become part of us and contribute to this ongoing story that is us. Um, and so I mean, in a sense, there is also that factor that we kind of tend to clean up someone's image after their death, where we may have talked trash about them during life, and then suddenly we're remembering all the best things about them. I can think of no better example of that than Michael Jackson. The yeah, I've been as guilty of anyone as making some an inappropriate Michael Jackson joke during his lifetime, but at the same time when he died, you got to remember Thriller and the great the immense legacy he had. Um, I think even the worst Michael Jackson haters have to look back at his peak years during the '80s when he was such a superstar. But anyway, I just think that there's kind of an impulse to try to remember the dead as a way of coping with their own death anxiety. That there's um, we remember the dead because we want to be remembered. and there are occasionally some people who aren't remembered fondly after death, who do get the grave spit on. I read recently about the death of this guy in Chile, who his name is Paul Schaefer, no relation to the guy on the Dave Letterman show. Um, he apparently was a Nazi corporal who then fled Germany at the end of the war and started this cult in Chile, on this compound where he molested many children, and then when Pinochet came to power, he used that compound to torture left-wing dissidents. So, just a stand-up swell guy, right? Yeah, that's kind of thing where a lot of people have no problem spitting on their grave. And in a sense, I think some of us, like, we don't want to hate someone when they're dead, but there are some people who they manage to be evil enough that we end up saying good riddance. And I think for many of us, that would actually be the ultimate punishment, is to be remembered to be remembered badly after death. Um, to have people spit on our graves. We may not be around to experience it, but because of our drive for immortality, um, I think that is in a sense our ultimate fear, is to be hated in our death, and to not be missed. So I guess I'll leave it there for now. Peace.